First up, though, let's return to the issue of the spending review and Rachel Reeves' performance. 45 minutes of it yesterday, where she announced huge sums of money that are going more in public spending, some in investment infrastructure that many of us would very much welcome. But what she didn't do, what she wasn't expected to do, but one has no idea how she's going to do, is announce how she's going to pay for it all. Speculation from not just opposition parties, but the Institute of Fiscal Studies and pretty much every other think tank and financial body, that she's going to have to raise taxes in the autumn. Well, let's talk about all of this now with John Lord Moynihan. He's a Conservative peer and author of the brilliant book on, the economy and how we could return to growth, called Return to Growth. A very good afternoon to you.
Lovely to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. I suppose just your first thoughts, your initial thoughts, when, I don't know if you managed to watch or listen to Rachel Reeves. We got Peter Carbell to watch it here, so we could just do the highlights. We didn't actually have to listen to her. I'm genuinely impossible. I find it impossible to listen to her or Keir Starmer without just sort of hanging my head. But what was your reaction to what she announced yesterday?
Well, very quickly, first, enormous sympathy to those families. And anybody in doubt, because it must be terrible, wondering what on earth's happening. But having said that, I tried to watch her, and it's mostly blather. It's sort of, people are in need, and that's why I am announcing, and so forth. And it's terribly difficult to actually untangle what it all adds up to, and very few people have actually added it all up.
Yeah. And we haven't got the OBR, the Office of Budget Responsibility, giving their take, because it's a spending review, not a budget. Or an
Correct. And of course the OBR have been proved wrong over and over again. Last year, at the last analysis they did, they said GDP growth would be 2% as a result of this.
Sorry,
I know. And then they cut that to 1%, and now they're going to have to cut it again.
And it's fallen by 0.3% in April.
Just today, which we all knew was going to happen because the NIC came in and so many things. But in fact, what we really need is commentators who talk about 7 different things. They talk about spending, tax, the deficit, immigration, employment, GDP growth, inflation. 7 different things are all affected by what she has done. Now, first of all, as you're saying, she's spending a lot more. And I wish people would stop talking about expenditure versus investment. It's all money out. When you do your household finances, you look at how much you've got in the bank and you say, how much can I afford to spend?
But you might say, but putting in a new kitchen, that will improve the value of your home, and therefore that's an investment. I mean, I know it's still money that comes out of the same account. Have you got
the money?
Yeah.
Where are you going to get the money? So we need to know how much she's spending. Now, this thing, then people say, everybody's saying, well, they're spending a lot more money than they said they would, so they're going to have to raise taxes. But there's a difference between the tax rate and the tax take.
Yeah.
You, Julia, when they raise taxes, will have to pay more money. I can guarantee you that, and so will I. But that doesn't mean to say that the overall amount of money they raise from these increased taxes will increase. In fact, they'll probably go down. And this is
why do you say that? This is the Laffer Curve.
Well, it's what I incredibly egocentrically call the Moyni Curve, which is a further iteration of the Laffer Curve. It actually
explain it in simple terms for us, please.
I've written about this since 2016. Every year, they announce more taxes, and they say, therefore, we're going to get more money coming in because we've raised tax rates. And I wrote in 2016, and I wrote every year since, the British people won't pay more than about 36% of GDP in taxes. You won't get more than that out of them. So what is happening now that they're increasing taxes on steroids, is there's a flood of people out of the country.
Yeah.
And it's
one millionaire every 45 minutes.
Exactly. So it's what the lefties call millionaires and billionaires, but it's not actually. It's high-end hairdressers. It's high strivers, 25 years old in the city. They're all going off to Dubai, to Monte Carlo, to New York, to Australia.
But they won't all go.
Look, Dubai is now somewhere between the 7th and the 11th largest British city.
Yeah.
Right? Yes, they are going, and it doesn't matter about all going. It's the top 1% who pay 30% of all taxes who are all flooding out.
And people say, they won't leave, but we know they do. We know they do. Okay, but here's the thing. When we're told, everyone is saying taxes are going to have to go up, you're saying that actually for an awful lot of ordinary people, people on normal average wages, just driving every day, that their taxes are or aren't likely to go up?
53% of Brits get more from the state than they give in taxes.
So they're not paying very much in tax, and they're getting
half.
Working tax credit, bit universal credit.
That's half. I'm assuming that you're paid an unconscionably large sum of money because you're so fantastic.
I do this for free.
You're so fantastic at what you do, and so therefore you will be hit, and you won't want to leave. I won't want to leave.
Better off people should pay more tax than people who are struggling, shouldn't they?
Well, they do. That's what I said. The top 1% of taxpayers pay 30% of all income tax.
So when people say, I mean, this is very much, a Jeremy Corbyn, tax the rich. I mean, everyone says people won't vote for higher taxes, but they did in 2017, when Jeremy Corbyn really almost got in 2017.
Correct.
Because it was other people over there.
Exactly.
But the reality is not only do those people leave when they can, the concern is also they are the people who provide the jobs which enable other people to pay tax.
Correct. And for 10 years, every year, I've said it won't go up above 36%. They're forecasting, the OBR forecasting, 38% of GDP will be the tax take. They forecast that with Sunak and Hunt. This is an ecumenical criticism. The Conservatives were just as bad as Labour. They all forecast we'll be able to get more money in taxes by increasing tax rates, and it never happens.
But fundamentally, Rachel Reeves has said, look, we're not going to borrow anymore, and we were spending already over £100 billion a year just servicing, just paying the interest on our debt. We're not paying off the mortgage, we're just on an interest-only one, guys. We've still got that debt. But she's also said, she wouldn't raise things like, she said income tax, VAT, national insurance on working people. They then basically pretended that didn't include national insurance for employers, which was a simple lie. It's a breach. However, if they're not going to raise, I don't think politically they can get away with raising VAT apart from on private school fees, obviously putting that in place, or national insurance or income tax. In which case, what are they going to do? Because they're going to be getting it from people on average incomes, because there are more of them than there are of the rich people, and people on average incomes can't afford to move to Monte Carlo.
Correct. Well, they can afford to move to Dubai. Lots of good, hard-striving people are. But you have to add up the math when they say they're not going to borrow more. They're saying that they're spending 45% of GDP on their various programs, partly because they're paying so much money to the public sector trade unions. In fact, when you throw in the investment, it's more like 47%. If you think that they only get 36% of GDP in tax, and they get about 4% more in rents and things like that of government property, so they'll be up to 40. That's a deficit of 7% of GDP, which is horrendous.
Give us, what sort of numbers? Because, again, most people don't even understand percentages.
Absolutely.
What sort of what actual numbers are we talking?
GDP is about £2.6 trillion right now. So half of that is £1.3 billion. 47% is just a bit less than that. And a 7% deficit is a couple of hundred billion.
Not going to help you here.
Couple of $100 billion.
Let me just get that from the back of the sofa. Couple of £100 billion more that we're spending than we've got coming in tax.
They're saying a lot of people are saying it's a £300 billion expenditure package when you include investment in this latest
That's not sustainable. I'm going out on a limb here.
No, the IMF is going to come calling. It was what they did.
Wait a minute, but aren't all the other countries in Western Europe doing it as well? We've had Elon Musk in America saying that they're multi-trillion dollar debt.
We're worse. Our GDP is worse. Don't forget that the big thing that's dropping in GDP is manufacturing. Why is manufacturing dropping? It's because we have the highest electricity prices in the developed world. And so all the manufacturers are closing down, going offshore. Also, we've increased NIC, so it's much more expensive to hire somebody. So you're just getting less and less and less.
But this is the thing, isn't it? When the government talks about we're going to predicate everything based on growth, again, I'm in favour of some of the infrastructure spending. I want reservoirs built. I want nuclear power stations built. I want infrastructure in the Midlands and the North. Exactly, you need the money to pay for it. Now, you might borrow in advance because that's going to improve our economy overall and give us secure energy. So you borrow to pay for it, but you need to have a plan in the future. We're not going to be getting 2.5% growth. No one is thinking that's going to happen. In fact, our best chance of getting it is if we go to war, because war is great for growth, isn't it? It's great for economy because you go onto a war footing and then you start manufacturing. But given the uncertainties over Donald Trump's whims on any given morning, in terms of trade tariffs, given where we are with Vladimir Putin, we've had warnings from the German spy agency chief that he thinks that Vladimir Putin's going to test a NATO country next after Ukraine. People predictions of us, a war, between China invading, seizing Taiwan or controlling the waters around Taiwan within a couple of years. If you think Ukraine had an economic impact, think again, hold my beer, says China.
Yes.
We have so much coming down the line, which would each individual thing would throw not a spanner. I mean, I've thrown, goodness me, multi-billion, multi-trillion pound spanner in the works. What hope does Rachel Reeves have of ever getting on top of this?
Correct, and you made the important point about defence. This set of announcements makes it more likely that Donald Trump will walk away. Why? Because they will walk away from NATO, will walk away from supporting us, because she says, we're increasing defence expenditure. How did she do that? We're spending this much, and then over here we're spending this on intelligence, on the Foreign Office and so forth, and she's just taken those numbers and put them into the defence spend and said, look, we're spending more on defence. We're actually not spending a lot more. And of course, what's more, the things we're already spending on defence, like DEI and making sure that we've got a happy clappy
Chagos surrender,
the Chagos surrender and so forth. We're not.
And it's not what we spend; it's what we can actually do with what we spend.
It's the armaments.
Okay.
Yes.
How have we got ourselves into this mess? Because look, a lot of people will say, I mean, the Tories would argue, look, we were left with having to deal with austerity after the banking crash, deregulation of banking. That was what caused the problem, the housing crisis, housing collapse in America. The Labour Party would say, no, it's all down your lockdown policies. Of course, they would have supported more and longer lockdowns, so they're not off the hook there. Then it's the Ukraine war, and everyone's always blaming, but of course, again, that spike in energy prices largely down to long-standing policies of us not having a secure energy in this country already ourselves. And again, the bailout of people's energy bills, Labour was calling for it as well. They're all just as bad as each other, I think most of my audience would say, and I would say. But how have we got into a mess where we just go, we're just going to keep spending and spending and spending and raising taxes and raising taxes? And there might be a little correction here and there by a tiny amount. Because is any of that sustainable long term? I
don't think it's much to do with the 2007 crash. What happened was, back in the year 2000, Tony Blair and Gordon Brown were spending about 1/3 of the economy on government expenditure.
That's when we were booming.
Now it's almost half. Back in 2000, under Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, they were raising tax at a lower number than that, and thus creating a surplus every year. For 3 years, this country was in surplus and paying its debt down.
We still had some leftover North Sea oil money. There were other things going on that meant things were going well.
But basically, we had a smaller government and lower taxes, and then Gordon Brown went tonto and started spending, and then they were talking of austerity in 2010. That wasn't austerity. We were actually growing our expenditure every year. And ever since, we've been spending more and more and more. And unfortunately, I think I know I'm well off now, so, people can yell at me for talking from the comfortable position of being well off. But for most people in this country now, and for the commentariat, the emphasis is on rights, not responsibilities. And it's my right to get the government spend this money on me on this, and this. Nothing about it's my responsibility to stand on my own, to look after my family, to live within my means, and to not look to the state to provide everything. Yeah. Because when you do that latter, then you get an economy that doesn't grow. And we're now the 27th richest in terms of GDP per capita around the developed nations, out of 45 nations.
And it's per capita that matters. We've been told for years, mass immigration is great, it's great for the economy. No, and again, that's simply not the case in terms of the majority. But also, low-skilled, low-wage work. But also, once you added an extra number of people, you had 10 million more people, but you don't build any more houses, don't build any more infrastructure.
So
you have
half
that cost.
of social housing is now occupied by foreign-born.
Yeah, in London. Yeah. What is the answer? Because, and I say this I think we get the politicians we deserve, because voters say, Oh, I don't want my taxes to go up. You can put taxes up on John. That's fine. I don't want my taxes to go up. Oh, but you need to pay the nurses more. Oh, but I want more for the schools. I like my kids' teacher. Oh, but I want that new power station. Oh, but I want you to build some more rail link. More police, please. More prisons, please. Yeah. Everybody wants more, but everyone says, I don't want my taxes to go up. Aren't we responsible as a whole, the British population, for this mess? Because politicians do it. They lie to us, but I think we force them to lie to us, because if they said, we're going to have to put your taxes up to pay for this, or we're not going to have it, I don't think they get voted in.
Huey Long said it almost a century ago. He said, don't tax me, don't tax thee, tax the fella behind the tree. And it's always been the same. And so you've got to have politicians, and I don't think there are any right now, who say there is no money. You have responsibilities. We can't fulfill everything you think of as a right.
When you look at someone like Milei in Argentina,
correct.
Is he doing the right thing? I mean, he has massive public support. He gets applauded in and out of restaurants.
Yes.
But he has huge cuts.
But do we have to fall to the appalling lows that Argentina has fallen to before a Milei appears? That's called having a Milei moment, and we're a little ways off from that. But I think we'll be there by the end of this Parliament.
You think we are going to be in those sort of straits?
Yeah, and
do you think people are waking up to it? Do you think, well, also actually, when they do put taxes up in the autumn, but they try and put them on, on business corporation, and people stop employing people, and people leave, and our tax takes goes down, and then we get into more and more and more mess, and the debt goes up. Yeah. And our debt, every time that happens, our debt costs will go up, will they not? Our debt costs are higher than Italy's by a long way already, which says something, because we're a better economy than theirs. We should be having lower costs. We are considered now a bad bet. If that all happens, do you think there will be a wake-up call?
I don't know. I don't know what kind of people live in this country anymore, but I hope so. But partly it's the media. There's so few people like you who are prepared to call it like it is, and who talk about investment, and who talk about, everybody should pay more. Oh, these millionaires and billionaires, they should pay more. It's fantasy economics. All of which is revealed in my book.
Yes, I have to mention. Return to Growth. We talked about it on the show before. Return to Growth. Lord Moynihan, John Moynihan, really, really interesting to hear your thoughts about this. Listening to all of that, Philip Ingram with great interest. What do you want to say?
Yeah, well, fascinating. Across all departments, and I see this, and I've seen this in the Ministry of Defence. One of the issues is a lack of accountability for those that are decision makers. They don't see the money as their money, and therefore there's a lack of responsibility. Correct. And people will get promoted out of positions where they make complete and utter mess ups of major programmes, and a lot of
the bigger your budget, the better it is for your career.
And until we bring in two things: one, accountability for those that are paid huge sums of taxpayers' money in their salaries and their final salary pensions, they should be held to account. And the second thing is, get rid of politics by soundbite, please. Put substance behind it.
We need to start doing some 24-year planning rather than 24-hour politicking. Thank you very much, Philip. And huge thanks to Lord Moynihan, Conservative peer, author of Return to Growth, coming in. I imagine an awful lot of you were cheering on every single word there. But nevertheless, your taxes will go up in the autumn, just so you're wondering.